Howdy, this is Karen from Round Table Yarns, and today I'm going to show you how to weave in your ends. So the first thing you want to do is take a tapestry needle and thread it with your end. I usually leave about 6 to 8 inches of tail to weave in. Then the goal for weaving in ends is to make it secure. So I have seen people that just take their yarn and they take their needle and they just go up in a single line and pull it through and cut it off. That is not what I recommend because that is not going to be secure. You want to do something that's going to change directions a few times to help make it more secure. So if you really just want to do the straight line, you could do one straight line and then curve and come back and do another straight line. At least that's a little more secure than just one straight line. But I'm going to show you the way that I do it so that it feels at least a little more secure to me. So the first thing to do is to kind of figure out where your yarn is coming from. So I see it kind of coming out of this stitch. And then I'm going to pick a row of ridges. So basically kind of the over, under pattern. And this is the back of a stockinette swatch, but you will also see this on garter stitch, and even lace and cables will have this kind of patterning. So I find where the yarn is coming from, and then I'm going to find a place where the stitch goes, it looks like a little hill, and I'm going to put my yarn all the way under that stitch and pull it through. Then, like I said, I'm going to find a little path that goes along that line. So there's one that goes down and pull the yarn through. And then there's the one beside it that goes up. So I'm just going under that. And there's the next one that goes down. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm just going up on the one that goes up and pull it through, and down on the one that goes down. And I just go down that line. If I'm doing lace, I might, if there's a yarn over there, I might go up a little bit, change my line, but I'm still doing this up and down path. Now I usually weave in my ends for a good 20 stitches. I like my ends to really feel secure. But then the last couple of stitches, what I do is instead of going all the way under this strand of yarn, I'm going to take my needle and poke it through kind of the middle of that yarn. So hopefully if I get a little bit closer to the camera, you can see that, where I'm poking through the middle of that strand of yarn. And then the same thing on the next one. Instead of going all the way through, I'm going to poke my needle through the center. And that just, to me, feels a little more grabby, and it feels more secure for those last few stitches. So once I've done that twice, that's when I usually cut the yarn, and I would cut the yarn right there. This particular yarn that I'm using is wool, and so wool is pretty grabby, so that motion, which by the way, on the front side, you cannot see that. Your yarn is not going to show through. So wool is usually grabby, and that is usually plenty to be able to do that. I've cut the end. When I pull on it, it really doesn't come through. It is secure. But if you have a more slippery yarn such as cotton or bamboo, you might want to do a little something extra to secure that because it's not going to be as grabby as wool. So my recommendation there is to work a few stitches like I did in the first example. And then after a few stitches, take your yarn, assuming it has more than one ply, and separate it into 2 different sections, and you're just going to be taking the twist out, so you'll see that twist around there. So now you have 2 sections of the yarn, and then what you can do is thread one of those sections onto your needle. So I've threaded one of those sections onto my needle, and the other section is still not on the needle. Then you have 2 options at this point. You can either weave in each of these 2 sides, and I would go in different directions and then trim them at the end, or you can take these two sections, thread one onto your needle like this, make sure you've got all of the twist out so you can get as close to this as possible. I think I've got one more twist in there. Take the yarn that's on your needle, just thread it through one of these stitches so that way it's a little further away from this yarn, it's not right beside each other. And then you can do something that is typically not done in knitting, but sometimes is needed. You can tie a knot. So like I said, I would actually go ahead and weave in a few stitches before I tied this knot, but after that, go ahead and tie a knot. Usually the yarn is not going to be super thick and the knot's not going to show. So make sure it's an actual knot so that it holds. And again, I would only do this, yarn's all twisty so it's hard to knot. I would only do this on a very slippery yarn such as cotton or bamboo, and when you pull that, pull it really tight so that way it's a very tiny knot and it doesn't show, and then you can trim that and the knot will hold that slippery yarn in. Again, I don't recommend that normally, but if your fiber is very slippery, that might be an option just to help you feel extra secure. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I am Karen Dawn on Ravelry, or you can find me on roundtableyarns.com. Thanks and happy knitting.